Okay, so let's just jump in. We are now in entering year two of COVID pandemic. And a year ago, schools started saying they were going to go test optional, right? And then shortly after that, several of the UCs went test blind, and then the courts, had all of them go test blind. And here we are a year later, and already so many have already said test optional for at least the next year, with not completely knowing what's in front of that after that. But they said as the UCs go, so does the rest of the country. But there's this narrow view I know that you have of who should still be taking the test. So go ahead and shed some light for us as to why the test still exists and who should be taking it.
Okay, well, here's my pitch. It's not even really a pitch. What happened was I thought, oh, we won't get as many SAT and ACT students as we did in the past because of this test blind stuff. That wasn't the truth. That wasn't the case. I still work with I would say 60% of my client pool are private school children that are overachievers or, different frameworks, but private school. Those kids are still taking these tests. And why is that? Because of what I talked about earlier, which is because the competition coming out of those schools is so stiff. It's your AQs and all of these different numbers are really, they're going to serve you. These are the numbers that make you stand out. And so what's happening is the kids that can still take the test or want to still take the test are still taking the test. So that means there are people still applying who will have taken that exam and are going to be submitting the test. And so for people who are thinking, oh, it's not a big deal, guess what? The competitive kids are still taking that test. And the kids that want to get into the Harvard, how about this, the top 100 schools? How about top 100? Because NYU median score is 33. Mm-hmm. Guess what? That's a dream score of actually somebody that just came to my office. She wants to go to NYU. I said, let's look at the median score for NYU. Yes, it's test optional, but guess what? There are going to be people applying. And so if you want to, and you're a good test taker, it really behooves you to still invest. And then I loved what the woman from your Dream Academy said. If you're applying for scholarships, also extremely valuable. So even if you're not one of the kids that goes to a private school, but you are wanting to apply and you are needs-based, you want those scores because guess what? It qualifies you for all these fantastic scholarships. And people forget that all the time. There's so many National Merit Scholars and you name it. There's so many things. And so to me, yes, people are still taking it. Two, you're going to be competing against people that have taken 3, 4, 5 APs, plus have taken the SAT, ACT. You want to give yourself the most chances, right? You want to give that school a clear path to say yes to you. That's what I say. It's like when you go into an interview and you want the employer to say yes, you do more than what the other person's doing. You send the thank you note. You send the this. You send the handwritten thank you note. Guess what? Those people, squeaky wheels get the grease, or whatever the hell, whatever that is. It's like, it really is true. The people that work just a little bit harder, they do shine. And so if you can take that extra step and invest, I think it's an investment in yourself. That's my personal feeling.
Yeah, and I always go back to what I learned in my days at Vassar, that at the end of the day, the question they're answering when they're reading your application is, given your resources, what did you do with them? And so what we're also speaking to, and sometimes is the elephant in the room and nobody likes to just label it, is that if you have the means, the wherewithal, and that can just mean literally that you can afford to take the test, you can afford to get prep, you go to a private school. Again, what we started with by saying is your closest competition are those you're going to school with. So for me, my private clients, I say the same thing. Listen, let's find out if everyone else in your class is going to be taking it? Or is your school going to sort of say, this, we're going to do a moratorium, we're going to say, we're going to advocate and encourage our students not to take it? That's a different story. Very few schools will do that. That's different. But if everybody, if your peer group, your closest peer group is going to take the test, then you're going to be compared to that closest peer group.
But I love what you said too, because I think this is really relevant. I also think, and my father was in admissions as well, so I always used to hear these things growing up. That's also kind of like in the back of my mind. This is why I also have a lot of good information. He was a doctor at USC Medical, but he also got to choose who got into the medical school. So the thing that's so interesting is I think they also want to understand, yes, what did you do with the resources you had? And then what are you going to do on their campus? You know, they project out, like, what kind of kid are you going to be? Do you fit their student profile? Are you going to be able to handle the rigor, especially when it's a tougher school? Can you handle the rigor of that school? Like, how will you thrive in that environment? How do you fit the kind of citizens, global citizens that they want to bring onto their campus? What are you the kid that started the, you know, the cool group on campus, the anti-racist group on campus? Like, what were you doing with the time? Or were you just hanging out?
Yes, sing it.
And I think that's what they're really looking at it. Now, does that, because a lot of parents will come and be like, oh, my kid didn't have time. There's so much to do with the school and their sports. They don't have time to maybe start a club, or they didn't, you know, you don't need to be perfect. That's the other thing. You don't need to be perfect, but I think you need to be the best you.
Yes, you do need to be the best you. And you know, I try to be pretty honest with those who are applying or dreaming of HYPRS. The AQs get your foot in the door. That's just totally. You having the luxury of hanging with the big boys and big girls. Right. But it's the PQs that make you stand out. And I say, you have to remember, the kind of student that's applying to these schools that are admitting less than 10%, they're training for the Junior Olympics or the real Olympics. Like, they're putting in 20 hours of like something.
No. I know.
Really, like, you got to find something that you can honestly give 10 to 15 hours a week doing that. That's your Junior Olympics. Hello.
No, I know. One of the women that worked for me as a coach, this wonderful woman from Harvard, got into Harvard Medical while she was working for me, was applying to go back to be a doctor. She was incredible. She was she was a pre-Olympic athlete, right? So, and I just saw her resume and I knew I wanted to hire this woman and then you met her and she was the most incredible human to talk with. She was inspiring. She was so passionate about what she does, and what she cares about. And I think sometimes we have to be clear is that it doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but I think what makes those kids stand out, the kids that go to HYPS or a top 100 school, they're really passionate about what they're passionate about, right? They're very committed kids, whatever that is.
Yeah, and there's clear evidence in their resume when you read their application that that's true.